Hey y'all, welcome back to Live Life Grow. I'm Laura and I'm so glad you joined me. Today I'm going to be talking about the pre-K curriculum that we used for the school year 2017-2018 for my son. I know that one of the first questions I ask people when I meet new homeschool parents or find out that somebody's homeschooling is, what curriculum do you use? Okay, so to include everything that we used for my son's pre-K curriculum this past year, we did reading, him early reading skills. We did reading, which is read aloud. And then we did early math skills like positioning, shapes, colors, those sort of things. And then we actually moved on into actually starting a math program. And then we did handwriting, we did history, we did science, we did arts and crafts, and we were actually part of a homeschool group. So let's dive into the details of all those things. Okay, so first of all, I want to go over all the things that we actually did not do inside our home. We actually were part of a homeschool group that was not a co-op or even a paid group. Our local library sponsored homeschool families one day a week where they would bring in for a couple of hours. They would do crafts. They would talk about, for Martin Luther King. We went through a Martin Luther King lesson. And then we actually did arts and crafts at another branch of our local library where we went one day a week and we did school crafts for elementary age students. You can see a lot of the crafts on the wall that are back here behind me were from different homeschool or library meetings. Okay, so for reading and reading aloud, specifically, we read aloud a lot of books for my son and daughter. We did like Dr. Dolittle and Peter Pan, and we did some other things, and we especially did those toward bedtimes. But every week when we went to our library group, we got a huge stack of books. He picked a stack of books out, and I would pick books out for us to last through the week, and every day we had reading time. We would just pile up on the rug, snuggle up, and read 3, 4, 5 books at a time. So that was just kind of our read aloud time. And then we had learning to read time, which I used the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading. I did enjoy this book. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I would recommend it. This is something we're continuing to use in our kindergarten curriculum, and this is something I would recommend, mainly because it's relatively inexpensive for a reading program. There is nothing that you have to purchase with it. You can purchase some flashcards and some other things. However, I just made them at home. I purchased a magnetic board and magnetic letters from Amazon and Walmart, and it really is pretty straightforward, very helpful, and it has almost, 231 lessons. So this can be something you can use for pre-kindergarten through kindergarten. So I would highly recommend this just because it is a very good guide to teaching reading. Okay, so what about basic math skills? You know, every kid needs to learn their shapes. They need to learn their colors. Fortunately for me, my kids had actually been in private school before we decided to homeschool. So he had been to a 3-year-old pre-K, and he had actually learned pretty much all of his letters and his colors and some shapes and things like that. So a lot of what we did this year was a lot of review and then building on top of that, because fortunately for me, I wasn't starting from scratch. However, I did want to reinforce those things and make sure that he had mastery of those skills. So that being said, I have a whole handful of workbooks that he used. Some of these I was given from people, and some of these I just picked up along the way at Toys R Us. There's a preschool workbook on Watch Me Learn. A lot of these have places for them to actually do handwriting for their letters, and some of them have like beginning sounds, which comes first, what's missing, dot to dots, those sort of things. On the road to learning, fine motor skills, number sets, following directions, learning new words, and developing listening skills. So all of these things are things that he would have been learning in a pre-kindergarten class, and these were just simple little workbooks that I got for free. This is a reading readiness book. I did actually purchase this, and I did enjoy this. Included in here, he actually completed this whole thing. So it talks about recognizing long vowel sounds, short vowel sounds, story order, what's different, long and short, short and tall, things that don't belong in groups, those basic things that they would learn in pre-K. So this was just a simple little workbook that I picked up at Toys R Us. And then I have this big, thick, big preschool workbook. I think you can get this through Amazon. I've seen it through Amazon. I picked it up at Toys R Us, I believe. And then, yeah, it has a big Toys R Us sticker on it. So it's, once again, you're recognizing your letters, tracing mazes, just handwriting skills with the mazes, those basic things, learning letters, recognizing colors, following directions, counting to 10, identifying shapes, and so much more. So basically there was no set curriculum that I had for him, which, and you know, a lot of kids don't even go to preschool, so I wouldn't worry about purchasing some big elaborate curriculum. I mean, this totally worked for us. I had workbooks laying around. I purchased workbooks when I went to Toys R Us, or even at the grocery store. I got dot to dot books that worked out great. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on preschool. We also did early math skills, which we then progressed into actual math. Our early math skills were counting to 100, skip counting, recognizing number order, and a lot of that I don't have a book to show you, because a lot of that I just did verbally with him. I had a number grid that I used, and I showed it to him, and we did 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I had number cards that I laid out for him, and he had to put them in order. And then I would do like flashcards, just like you would do for addition or subtraction. And he would have to tell me the number and recognize them. And then we would spend maybe 5 minutes just practicing skip counting, practicing counting to 100, until it was something he had mastered. And it was just as simple as going, hey, you know, let's count by 2s together. Let's count by 5s. And, you know, you do it, you know, 2 or 3 weeks in a row for 5 minutes a day, and he picked up on it. So basically that didn't require anything, an actual curriculum book. And it was something that he picked up on pretty quickly. If you want to, I will link the number grid that I used, number chart, down below, and also have a link to flashcards. We'll do flashcards if you would like to access those. So let's move into what we did for once we moved to actual math curriculum. Okay, so for our real math, we did the Math Made Easy kindergarten. It was, let's see, writing the numbers, writing the number words, recognizing shapes, recognizing colors, can you remember things, and then it actually got into more than, less than, taking away, adding to, fewer than, drawing shapes, shorter, shortest, taller, tallest, above and below, sorting, things that are the same. All of that was in this handy dandy Math Made Easy kindergarten book. He went through this entire book. It was pretty cool because it has a progress chart where you can go through and put stars for as they complete the chart. So that was pretty cool. So I highly recommend this, and this would be something, if I had another pre-kindergartner or kindergartner, that I would definitely purchase again. Okay, once we moved into big boy math, I actually made him his own little math binder like his sister had. Printed off math sheets from the same curriculum that his sister uses in 3rd grade, because I had purchased the 1st through 7th grade, and I actually printed off, once I looked at the 1st grade curriculum, I realized it was something he could actually easily start doing. So I printed that off and got that in this nice handy little binder. Like starting with sums with 1, those sort of things. But this is a curriculum that I purchased a PDF version of, and I actually print off as I needed it. So it's Math Mammoth, and that's what we used toward the end of the year for his math. Okay, so for handwriting, if you noticed in the other preschool work text, there were tracing letters, drawing letters, numbers, those sort of things. So it was actually something that I would just turn into any of the preschool workbooks, find where they were wanting you to draw your letters, and I would have him usually do a letter a day, 1 or 2 pages of handwriting to really get down how to draw those letters. Yes, he was able to recognize them, but drawing them. And sometimes if there were some numbers that were a little bit more tricky, like the number 3, I actually got out flour and put it in a pan and let him trace it with his finger, and then he kind of got that down and would go back and then translate that into holding the pencil. So that is kind of what we did for handwriting. My pre-kindergartner did do history. We were learning history as part of his sister's 3rd grade curriculum, so we just brought him in. I let him answer questions. He participated in activities, and he absolutely loved it. I would highly recommend including your pre-kindergartner into your history program if you have older children. And we loved the story of the world. I have the work text or the reading text, and then an activity book. And my son, you would be surprised how much a pre-kindergartner can take in. He would, for reading comprehension, I would go back and ask questions after I read the text, and he would answer, definitely down on his level, but it was something he really enjoyed, listening to the stories. And I loved when we got to the Great Wall of China, talking about how it was built and how long it took. And he looked at me afterward and said, Mama, I want to go see the Great Wall of China. And I just loved it. I just loved that we had the opportunity for him to experience that and see that and have those hands-on activities with history, something that he would not have experienced in a regular pre-K class. So, and he will tell you this was one of his favorite things. So I highly recommend Story of the World, no matter what elementary age. Include them, and you can just go back and touch on it again, and they can learn even more about it. So we loved the Story of the World. So I also included my son in my 3rd grade daughter's science curriculum. We did a human body science, we did animal science, we did astronomy, we did plant science, and then towards the end of the year, I let him go and decide what he wanted to study for science. And when we would go to the library, he would pick out books. I think it was cool to have him really get involved into the science studies, because once again, like the history, that's something he would not have necessarily done in a traditional school. And he got really excited each week to decide what he wanted to study. And while at the beginning of the year when we talked about human body, which we talked about with the DK first human body, this is something he was able to understand some of it and follow along. It wasn't necessarily something he enjoyed. There were a lot of cool facts in here that he enjoyed and got to hear, and actually picked up some things that he can tell you now. And I would say, yes, if you have older children, definitely incorporate them, your pre-K, into this. There are things in here they won't understand, and he did enjoy it, but I will tell you, the animal book was his absolute favorite. I highly, highly, highly recommend this for any elementary age kid. This is something we just kind of happened upon in the library. We loved it so much that we bought it. It goes through the animal kingdoms. It talks about what animals are, what characteristics of animals, what makes animals animals, and there are lots of really cool things in here about unique animals, and my son just loved it. He will go back and tell you now some of his most favorite things from this past school year were from this book. And so if you're considering incorporating science into your pre-kindergartner's curriculum, go get this book. You will not be disappointed. And then for astronomy, we used the Usborne Story of Astronomy in Space. This was a little much for my pre-kindergartner, but there were a lot of cool facts. And we got the opportunity to go to the Space Center in Houston toward the end of the year as one of our kind of year-end field trips. And he thought it was super cool, and that we got to touch moon rocks and Mars, and we got to see all those things that we had talked about, and it was something that he otherwise may not have enjoyed had we not gone over this. That wraps up our preschool curriculum overview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this, please make sure and like below. I will be posting more videos like this. I have an upcoming video on my daughter's 3rd grade curriculum that we used for last year, so be sure and check that out if you are interested or have a 3rd grader coming up. And make sure and subscribe to my channel if you want to stay in the loop on the latest updates. Glad you enjoyed me. Y'all take care.